invites you to speak, just carry on and do so. Sarou, thank you. Over to you.
Thank you, kids. Now let me share my screen again. Sorry. Okay, sorry. I'll look here. I hope you're able to see this. I think.
Yep, that's right. Yep.
Right. Thank you, Ken, for the introduction, and thank you for inviting me for this talk and this seminar. So I like to say good evening from here. It's a bit late from here as well. Good afternoon there, and good morning, everyone. So as I am now from Canberra, I like to start by acknowledging the non-Awol and non-priest people whose traditional land I am speaking from today, and I like to pay my respect to the other past and present. So my talk today is actually asked allow me to share this experience. I'm going to talk about the idea of utilizing the Buddhist teaching in conservation activities and forest protection in Cambodia, and how the linkage of the Buddhism and environmental protection has emerged in Cambodia. And I will demonstrate the specific case, or the case study I can call is a monks community forest in the northwest part of the Cambodia. People call forest monk, or in Khmer Prey Lok. And I'm going to explain this case in the following slide. So I like to start this presentation with a story of deforestation in Cambodia. It's a bit sad story. I hope that the participant who attend or take part with this seminar familiar with the context of Cambodia as well. But I like to touch a bit historical background on the deforestation of forest loss in Cambodia. So before the Khmer time, the Cambodian primary forest cover was about 70% of the geographical area of the country. In the Khmer period, the forest area or forest landscape, especially the upland region of Cambodia, was very strong base for the Khmer. And the Khmer, as it's a bit far from the central state at the time. And that means that the Khmer used the forest side to gather the local people to participate in their communist ideology. Although the Khmer was overthrown in the 1979, but I mean the Khmer leaders and a small fraction of the troops fled to the north part of the Cambodia. It's close to the Thai border, and therefore the northwest region of Cambodia was still the stronghold of Khmer until the 1998. So between the 1980s and the early 1990s, the Khmer depend on a timber trade with Thailand. So the Thai militaries and the Thai companies deal directly with the Khmer at the time, because the Khmer have to survive using the money from the forest resource, buying resource or material or even weapon to control the region. So therefore, the main area of exploitation was heavily forest western region between the Thailand and Cambodia, which has been under the control of the Khmer at the time since in the early 1980s. So in the post-conflict time, two major policy that government introduced in the 1990s and during the 2000s. So the first policy was called the forest concession, which introduced in the 1990s, and giving this policy is giving license to local company or foreign company for the timber extraction, and that is therefore the how to say the commodification of Cambodian forests was interpreted as a process of transforming the nature into the money that the government aimed to at the time aimed to generate monies from the forest. The another policy is that impact the forest landscape of deforestation in Cambodia is called the economic land concession. Economic land concession was introduced in the land law in 2001 by the Cambodian government and through the sub-decree in 2009 in order to attract the large-scale investment into agribusiness with associated goal for the rural development and the job creation, and at the same time generate the money for the national budget for the national revenues. And though this land concession policy was a key driver for the deforestation or the forest loss in Cambodia, and it's also impact to the local community. Many people losing their land or land insecurity, especially again for the rural peoples and indigenous community as well. So at the same time, there was also many logging activities, and those activities linked closely with political and business leaders that exploit the country natural resources for personal profit and for the political power. So the forest landscape this day has been turned to large-scale plantations such as rubber and the other commercial crops. And this led to the local resistance and local movement during, starting from the 1990s, and that is at the time that the Cambodian Buddhist monk engaged with advocacy, education, and work strongly try to fight back to the government and the private company in terms of how to say, to protect the forest in the country. This map showing about what the government done up so far is related to the what I mentioned about the concession company giving land to foreign companies to in terms of mining or agri industrial plantation. So it's the whole country actually is under the the private company and planting rubber plantation, especially in the upland region of Cambodia. And this is create the conflict between private companies and the local people. So as I mentioned in a bit early that so during the 2000 or around the late 1990s, the Cambodian people face many challenges, losing their land and increasing economic and political marginalization. Many NGOs and donors have advocated measures for the Cambodian government to address these challenges. And at the time, many environmental programs were initiated by NGOs and donors in order to protect the Cambodian forest and working closely with the community as well. And that is some NGO working with the Buddhist monk to provide the environmental education plus the advocacy approach as well. So in 2004, the organization called Alliance of and Religion, which is based in UK, and they are working with the local NGO here in Cambodia. It's called Maluk is they organize a conference and invited monks from Myanmar, Laos, Thailand, and Buddhist monks throughout the countries in Cambodia to take part on the conference called Buddhism and the Environment. And at the time, from the Cambodian side, the Buddhist monk showed their interest to establish the what is called organization or association that working with environmental protection or forest protection, and that the in 2005 this association was established. It's called Association for Buddhists for the Environment, and they are linking all the Buddhist monks throughout the countries, working together in a Sangha communities in their effort to protect the Cambodian forest or environment. So the mission of the Association of Buddhists for Environment is to use or to utilize the Buddhist teaching as a pathway for the building support for the forest protection or conservation in Cambodia. So in and that is they link to different Buddhist temple or monasteries throughout the countries. What I'm going to talk today is picking up a case in the northwest of Cambodia. It's called a Buddhist how to say the monk community forest in very close to Thailand. I like to start with sharing a short video. I now stop this sharing the slide first, and then I going to share the video. By the way, are you able to see the video?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I'm gonna start with around 5 minutes.
These forests of Okda Menche are deceptively quiet. The grounds are ridden with mines, a legacy from the Khmer Rouge past. Despite the danger, these monks continue steadily to their destination, a row of century-old trees buried deep in the heart of this 18-hectare large conservation zone. They are practicing the age-old Buddhist tradition of ordaining the tree, a ritual that transforms this rugged trunk into something holy to the locals, a representation of Buddha himself.
បរិស្ថានក្នុងអាត្មានេះគឺថាបរិស្ថានគឺជីវិតរបស់អាត្មាមួយគឺដូចថាជាច្បាស់គឺក្នុងអាត្មានេះតែសារបរិស្ថាននេះគឺធ្វើឲ្យអាត្មានេះមានសេចក្តីរីករាយនឹងការថែរក្សាបរិស្ថានព្រោះដំណើរនៃជីវិតរបស់ព្រះអង្គលើជាស្ដែងជីវិតរបស់ព្រះអង្គគឺព្រះអង្គដែលព្រះអង្គទៅការព្រះអង្គដែលផ្សោតមកលើពីដើមមកណាអង្គផ្សោតហើយព្រះអង្គផ្លាស់ដឹងអង្គធ្វើមូលហើយនៅតែក្រមដើมឈើណាក្រមដើមឈើដូចនេះក៏នៅក្នុងក្រមបរិស្ថានលោកប្រាក់
For Venerable Salut, tree ordination in Ogda Menche is something he and his monks started back in 2002 out of sheer desperation. Cambodia was once considered to be the green lung of Southeast Asia, but 3 decades of protracted civil war and resources exploitation reduced it to one of the most deforested countries in the world today. Forests stretching more than 25,000 square kilometers, easily twice the size of Jamaica, were gone forever, especially in areas like Ronem Down Sam, Phnom Sangkos, and Ratana Kiri.
ជាពិសេសគឺដូចជាក្នុងខេត្តអមជ័យព្រោះដែលគេឲ្យឈ្មោះថាសម្បូរទៅដោយព្រៃធម្មជាតិមួយព្រៃឈើតែចុងក្រោយនេះគឺកើតទៅវាវិញហើយ
A litany of measures like the banning of logging, wood processing, and forest crime monitoring were implemented by the government in the 1990s. These failed miserably. Environmental protection remained undervalued. Immediate economic gains dictated. Timber is the most lucrative source of income for many Cambodian timber companies, netting a yearly profit of US $40 to $50 million. And so the illegal logging continued unabated. 6 years ago, Venerable Salut and his monks decided to put a stop to this by approaching the provincial authorities with a proposal. Let the monks take over as the official guardians of the forests. This Cambodian saffron order transformed what was one of the quietest religions in Asia into one of real action. It used the age-old Buddhist notion of karma, fell and you reap bad karma. Overnight, the monks accomplished what the government couldn't, but not all were convinced, especially the illegal logging companies.
យកអាវុធមកចុងចឹងណាយើងយកសម្ភារៈវាយើងទៅចាប់យកយន្តចាប់យកម៉ាស៊ីនចាប់យកអីចឹងណាព្រោះដល់យើងចាប់យកម៉ាស៊ីនវាព្រោះនេះវានឹងទេទៅតាមមួយទេដល់គេយកអាវុធយកអីមកដល់គេចុងយកសម្ភារៈទៅពេញទៅហើយគេមានប្រមាថឥណ្ឌាយើងថាឯងចង់មិនឯងចង់ស្លាប់មកចង់មិនចឹងគេក៏អាវុធដូចស្គីនឆ្កាងឆ្វេចឹងណាតែគេមកថាយើងគេនឹងបាញ់យើងគេមិនហ៊ានបាញ់គេនឹងអីគេយើងមិនហ៊ានទេតែគឺដល់គេធ្វើម៉េចគេយករបស់គេវិញបានណា
Thankfully for Venerable Salut, the villagers around the districts of Samrong responded to his cause. A 40-man-strong committee, made out of volunteers from 8 villages, now come together to patrol the forest twice a week. So far, the patrolling team has caught 53 individuals in the act and handed them over to the forestry authorities.
បាទសំណួរនឹងខ្ញុំសូមឆ្លើយថាបើខ្ញុំមកថែរក្សានឹងវាប៉ះពាល់ដល់ពេលវេលាខ្ញុំរស់ស៊ីវាមិនធំដុំប្រហែលទេអនុផលព្រៃឈើយើងហូតបានដូចជាវាហើយនឹងជឿក៏យើងហូតបានដែរហើយដៅស័យលពាកអីយើងហូតបានពីផលព្រៃឈើហើយជាពិសេសផ្សិតយើងហូតបានដល់រដូវវាគឺអស់ច្រើន
The onslaught of deforestation is often by the people who need the forest most. For us to enjoy one of the world's most popular pick-me-ups, over 1 million hectares of forest had to be sacrificed.
So let me share my screen with my slide again. Yeah, so as the video is provide a short description about the what we call the Buddhist monk or monk forest in Dorminche. I like to speak a little bit more about what Venerable Salut have done so far. So Venerable Salut, he was born in Dorminche, and Dorminche is one of the strongest, I would say, whole of the Khmer. Actually, the province was created or established in 1999 after the Khmer and in the 1998 at the time in this place in this region. So he got ordained in during the 1990s, and then as a young monk he went to study in Thailand. Actually, he went to study in Thailand and stay in Thailand for about 5 years in Thai monastery, actually on the northern part of Thailand, very close to Cambodia. And that's where he actually learned how to do a tree planting or working with a Buddhist Thai monk in Thailand, and he was impressed by the conservation ethic that the Thai monk have done in where he actually live and study there. So upon his return to Cambodia in 2000, around in 2000, a Venerable Salut was very shocked or not happy at all when he saw a lot of destruction or forest destruction in his home countries, and actually he's also start to got influence himself from learning in Thailand in terms of conservation ideas. So he was when he returned to his home province. He tried to work with different stakeholders like NGOs and governments, department or provincial department in that province in Dorminche in order to request the government to protect the forest in that region. So in the late 2001, Venerable Salut, he wrote a letter to the provincial governor at the time asking for permission to oversee protection of forest. It's about around 3,000 hectares. But the governors and the Ministry of Forestry at the time through the Forestry Department grant him in 2002 with the authority to protect around 18,000 hectares of forest land in the northwest of the country. And the area now is known in Khmer as Sang Rukkawan or Prelok, is meaning that forest monk. And so what he have done so far is he has established what we call a committee or working together to patrol the forest, and that the rule is actually to stop the logging and hunting, but the local people are allowed to access the forest or benefit from the forest in terms of the non-forest products or timber if people wish to build their house, etc. So Venerable Salut encouraged the other young monks to participate in forest protection, and slowly he began to raise awareness about the new protected areas among the local villagers and encourage some of them to take part in patrolling on a voluntary basis. And one, as you have seen in the video, one of the key activity that Venerable Salut used in a way that bringing people together is through the three ordination, and again the three ordination is a new practice Cambodia, but Venerable Salut learned this practice from Thailand when he actually studied in Thailand from the Buddhist monk in Thailand. And he also engaged with the school children, teaching them about the forest in that region and in a general environmental issue in that region as well. So this I mean Hmong and their team is what we call patrol teams, reach out to village nearby the Hmong forest and raising awareness about the protection of forest and asking the volunteer for patrol. And now it's about 8 villages who people who are living around the Hmong forest is take part in the conservation activities, and they join Hmong to patrol every day actually. So the core of the Hmong forest system of protection is regular patrolling of the forest and stop offender from carrying out the illegal activities in the Hmong forest. So the most unique characteristic of the patrol team are the made up of monks and the villager. So participation of monks in patrol or forest patrol is highly unusual in Cambodia, and therefore monks also were criticized by the public when working in the forest protection, as is contrast to the traditional pagoda-based lives of a monastic. However, the result is positive. The forest resources are protected, and it proved that a lot of the wildlife animal moving in the forest is the forest become a shelter of many wildlife animal actually. Yeah, it's a lot of hunting is going on, but at the same time Hmong able to stop it and protect the forest, and that is a picture of the animal that I captured from the trapping camera. So in recognizing his Venerable Salut's effort, that he developed a unique approach to law enforcement based on a Buddhist teaching and demonstrating the powers of linking conservation with the belief system. So he was awarded by the UNDP Equator Prize in New York in 2010. Is in a way that appreciation of what he had done in order to bring people together to protect the forest in his home country, home province. So despite the success, but also challenges along as well, and again, not all villagers are happy with his activity or Hmong conservation activities. The villagers in the south part of the community forestry are now in the conflict with the Hmong. They wanted to claim around 200 hectares of land for their agriculture, rice production or agriculture activities, and most of the villagers who living in that area is actually is a new people as well. When I say it's new people, actually people moving from different provinces into that region after the civil war. I mean, most of people came to live in that region between the early 2000, around the early 2000, and they settled in that area in order to get land for agriculture, and they actually sacrifice themselves because there's a lot of mining areas in that region as well because of this a stronghold side of the Khmer at the time. So this is a challenge, and this conflict is still going on. Honestly, at this moment, that local people at the south is not happy with the Hmong. They ask the Hmong to take some part of the forested area to be their agricultural land. I like to go with one more slide. I think at the end of my presentation, maybe a bit short. Actually, the big challenge here is actually he actually recently got disrobed. Honorable Bun Salut. Actually, he was disrobed 2 months ago. I was worried that he was threatened by the government or authority that to force him to disrobe. I was trying to get in touch with him 2 months ago, tried to learn what happened to him, and actually I found out that he's going to marry, and he actually already married last week, and he said he will still continue to participate in this forest conservation or activity, but he now transfer his management, forest management, to the new leadership, the young man who actually now continue working in this forest protection. But the future is I'm not sure what happening next as well, whether the villagers is happy to work with a young monk or not, and this is a question that I like to learn more as well from what happening recently with this road. Yeah. So I like to end my presentation about this. I mean the case on this. So if you like to have any question, I'm happy to answer. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Sarou. It's for your wonderful presentation and going through the kind of Buddhist perspective and effort to preserve the environment. So I think we will open for questions. If you have any questions, you can use the raise hand and we can kind of call out. Are there any questions? Kate.
Thank you. Of course, I take the opportunity to get in. I have lots of questions, but my first one is, what other kind of so is this a unique project, and how do other members of the Sangha in Cambodia respond to the environment, or is it not particularly a consideration? If they do respond, what other kinds of themes are used to try and protect environment, or bring environmental awareness to Cambodia?
Yes, thanks for the question. Yes, I mean, in the Cambodian context, is when it comes to forest protection or even the land issue here is a bit challenging, or it's a bit sensitive. I can say that it's a lot of monks actually in the country try to replicate or copy what the Venerable Salut have done so far in the Adom J into the other provinces as well. And the key issue is that happening up to now is actually is the government is often put a lot of pressure to the other monks who try to gather people to do the similar thing. What is actually make it possible for Venerable Salut to engage fully with this forest protection, and in some way having the government to support him to do this, because Venerable Salut, he also hold what we call in Cambodian monk management structure. He actually is a provincial monks, head of provincial monk, and that he has in some way have kind of influence to the other stakeholder like government agency within the province to respect a way that he had done. And recently, and a lot of the monks movement actually involved with the forest protection, but I'm sure, or maybe you have heard a bit about the political issue in the country, where the government dissolved the opposition party, and that they like to put a lot of pressure to any movement that happen at the ground. They always try to link the conservation activity to the political issue as well. Yeah, and that is a challenge, and it's a bit difficult working in this area in terms of security, etc. Yeah.
So have people lost their lives in trying to protect forests?
That's a lot. I think many people was killed, and a lot of activists was killed. Even actually, last year, one of the Buddhist monk was forced to disrobe because he engaged very active in forest protection in the, I think, in the northeast of the countries, and that the government forced him to disrobe.
Thank you, sir.
Sarou, if I could ask, you know, the video that you were showing, how long does it last? Could we see a little bit more of that?
Actually, it's very short. This is and by that actually. Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Mm. Okay. All right. Any other questions? Peter.
Hi, Peter.
Peter, could you unmute yourself? Peter, can you unmute yourself? Peter, you're muted. Wait, I can't hear you. Peter, there's some problems with.
Yes, we had the same problem with Sarou's earlier. Peter, you may need to log out and log back in, I'm afraid. While Peter's doing that, is it okay if I ask another question?
Yeah.
Thank you. I'm aware you're now working with on indigenous land rights. Can you say a bit about how the situation differs in terms of treatment of the forest and forest protection when you're dealing with indigenous peoples in Cambodia?
In terms of difficulties, sensitivity, and working with different groups, do you mean? Yeah.
Yes, and also what whether there are non-Buddhist projects to protect environment at all.
So I mean, if we look into the indigenous communities, it's a bit how to say, it's opportunities and also the difficulty getting at the same time for the indigenous communities, because of the strong support from the what we call international movement about the indigenous land rights, etc., and that the government in 2001 recognized the indigenous land rights, and then they allowed the indigenous community to claim what they call the communal land title. It's a collective land that the indigenous group can apply to protect their forests at the same time and using their traditional land. But then the tricky thing or difficult thing to do or getting land through the formal process is actually government put a lot of long process to which is very difficult for indigenous community to get their land as a formal way of having land registration process, etc. And that is if we look into the Buddhist monk, I think Buddhist monk mostly is I mean Cambodian people are the Buddhist, and that is a way that when engaging with the Buddhist idea or Buddhist teaching, many people participated. But then it's at the same time when linking to the forest protection is always a big challenge when the government tried to pressure. Yeah.
Thank you. I think Peter had put his question in the chat.
Yes. Yes. So we have questions from Peter Avi. Are Thai logging companies still active, cutting down the forests in nearby countries? Where is most Cambodian timber sold to? So 2 questions.
All right. So let me read. Okay, so yeah, I just read and make sure that I understand that question. So, yeah, so the first question is about the Thai logging company still active. So this moment, if at this time, I can say that the Thai logging company is not so active in that region anymore. It's actually a lot of that happening in the past, but the logging activity is more related to the what we call in the northeast part of the country, where engaged with the a formal way of giving land to the what we call economic land concession, giving land to the private company to clear for the rubber plantation and other commercial crop, and that is linked with deforestation. Actually, the idea of economic land acquisition is giving the decreted land to the private company to plan industrial plantation, but actually usually the government grant the forest area and to the company. They lock down the trees and then selling the timber to Vietnam and then to China. and they start to plant rubber for example. So they gain revenue from logging, at the same time starting growing the agri-industrial plantation.
There's another question from Angela Chu.
Okay, so in those places where the villager oppose the monk protection, do the monk have other suggestions how to, do or make thing? Yeah, I mean, a lot of initiative in that area as well, not just from the monk forest, but because the monk also try to link themselves with the other NGOs who are working in that area, and that they try to connect with the NGO who are providing livelihood activities to the to those groups as well through the what we call agriculture activities and growing crops so that they can sell to the market. But the monk themselves is allow the people who living around the forest to collect the what we call the forest product from the forest, like mushroom or other types of forest products, so that they can sell to market as well. And that um, is a way of monk doing to actually motivate the villager to continue to join the conservation activity. But the issue of the south part that I mentioned is also is a part of, how to say, is land speculation that happening in that area as well. The local people seeing that land price is increasing, and that is one way to gain a benefit through the land commodification. They wish to gain the private title through that area, so that they can also sell to the outsider. And this is a pressure that the outsider can put pressure to the conservation activity in that way as well.
I have a question, which is that the monks, well, in addition to kind of preserving the forest, do they engage in other kind of environmental activities in terms of kind of wider issues such as climate change and any other kind of side effect from the environmental impact?
Mm-hmm. So yes, so I mean, I'm not sure you heard about the what we call the Red Plus. So that community forest was taken by the NGO and the UN agency to be part of what we call reducing emission from deforestation and forest degradation, and it's a part of climate change initiative that introduced by the global what we call United Nations Convention framework. So the forest in that area was part of the Red Plus, but that's not working well for the past few years. The idea is actually to sell the carbon credit from the forest protection to the private company who pollute the environment, etc. There was the company like Microsoft interested to purchase the carbon credit from that region, but because of the government not taking it seriously in terms of working with the it's a very complicated mechanism in terms of dealing with the carbon credit. We have to follow with different guidelines and and that is the government did not meet the standard of doing that, and they could not actually sell the credit in that area. Yeah.
Thank you. Very interesting and very complex as well.
Right.
You know.
Yeah.
Kate.
Thank you. Sorry, I want to ask a question about something rather different,
right.
Which is that I've witnessed you doing interviews and seen some of the results of your interviews for a long time now.
Right.
And you are particularly sensitive when you're doing interviews, and it's very impressive. And I wondered if you could just say a bit about your approach to interviewing your informants.
Right. Okay. Well, I don't know, but yes, because what I have done so far is when I start working with environmental issue, I engage with a lot of people at the grassroots level. I listen to their story in terms of, livelihood, deforestation, and people losing their land to the private company, etc. So I engage with a lot of people through listening to their story, and I tend to do a lot of observation and learn through that. At the same time, I question people as well, and a combination of observation, in a way, what I call a participatory approach. Uh, and I really interested in ethnography approach. Actually, it's a part of my fieldwork that I'm going to do with my PhD research in the northern part of the countries, and I like to do kind of meeting and slowly staying. I stay in a village and start to learn about their way of life, at the same time understand their issue and dealing with the land and forests in their communities. And that is something that this experience working in this area and listen to a lot of people issue. That's why when I come to interview people, I start to do a lot of observation and understand their feeling and what is appropriate way to ask people as well when doing a field activity or interview local people or even the government. It's it's difficult to do that. Yeah.
Thank you.
Right.
Thank you. Will you be writing up any of those stories? It would be really interesting to kind of read and kind of,
Right. Well, actually, I was in honestly, when I decided to do my PhD research, I was thinking whether I start to tell this story or I'm looking with the indigenous land. Actually, it's actually the interesting to look into deeper on that as well. But I'm more likely to go with indigenous land rights actually, because I also work a lot with those group who has a lot of issue with the government taking their land and I grew up from the rural village as well. When it comes to land or people losing their land, it's a part of emotional thing for me, and that I choose to go with the with the indigenous land rights in Cambodia, part of my research project for PhD. But maybe in the future, for sure, I like to probably learn more and tell this story to the world as well. Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know if you are aware that recently there's been a few publication came out regarding land rights and land grabbing in Myanmar. So there are a few resources or sources that you could kind of look at as well.
Right. Yeah.
I could find the sources. I think I have some as well. So.
Right. Thank you. Yeah.
If there are no questions, may I invite Angela Chu to announce our next talk.
Yes, hi everyone. We usually have a monthly talk, but next month, April, will be a time of holidays in Southeast Asia, so we will not have a talk. So our next talk will actually be on the 21st of May, and it will be by Professor Patrathon Jirapawat. She will be speaking about Buddhist boundary markers, SEMA, as they were conceptualized, categorized, and developed during the reigns of King Mongkut and King Chulalongkorn in the 19th and early 20th centuries. So look forward to seeing you all in May. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Okay.
So yes, so could I just thank everybody for attending and thank Sarou for giving us this interesting talk. We'll stop recording now, but if Sarou can bear to stay with us just a little while longer in case anybody just wants to chat at the end, that would be really